Have you ever felt like you always have to be ready? Ready for someone's mood to change. Ready for an argument. Ready for something to go wrong. Maybe you became the person who notices everything, reads the room, and tries to keep everyone okay. And from the outside, that can look like strength. But what if it actually started because you didn't feel safe enough to relax?
I would say that I'm a fifth generation Texan. I came from a fair amount of dysfunction, parents doing the best they could with what they knew, both coming from really, really, really tough upbringings that included, poverty, addiction. And so probably a lot of the stereotypes you would think about fifth generation Texan: tough, don't cry. We were allowed a very small continuum of emotions were approved, which were pissed off or okay. Like anger was okay, but no, couldn't be sad really. Or vulnerability was not a thing. Vulnerability was weakness and scary and put you in jeopardy. I felt like a real outsider at home and in school. But I was really good at reading people, reading situations. I think a therapist somewhere along the way said, yes, that's hypervigilance. You're hypervigilant. I can see everything around me and everything's going on. I can connect things very quickly that other people don't see. And there was laughter and there was love. But there was a ton of unpredictability. Yeah. I think, yes, being fun loving was very valued in my family, and being tough. These were the values. These are on the parental scorecard. This is what got you an A. If you're fun, easy, you can, shoot straight, spit far, fish well, like really drive fast. And so those things were very valued. Athleticism was very valued. But those fun things could turn really hard very quickly. But I definitely had a protector role as the oldest. Codename Sister Superior. It was jokingly, but it wasn't joking. Like if things got hard between my parents and they would get in volatile fights, I would go get all my siblings, put them in my room. I'd go downstairs and handle it. I was definitely the protector. On occasion, but more emotionally volatile. There was we had a lot of screaming, and there's a certain, if you grew up with hearing screaming through a wall, you know that sound. Mm-hmm. Do you know that sound?
Of course.
Yeah. And so, I'm sorry, because I don't like to hear that about your childhood, and I don't like to know that about my childhood, but there was a lot of screaming. And so I think hypervigilant, protective, responsible, with a dose of be very fucking careful, because I will protect my siblings. My Steve definitely got over the wall. But it was like game recognizes game. He had a wall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so we had long conversations about our walls, and slowly through those conversations, those walls crumbled with each other, and we've been together now for 38 years.
Wow.
Yeah. The hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Bar none, dude. Nothing has been harder. Yeah. When I started dating Steve, when we got married, 6 months after we got married, this is, you said for you, love was going to be being a prisoner and having to just shut down to survive. Right. For me, 6 months after we were married, I went to go see a therapist, and I said, I cannot do this. I've got to get out of this marriage. And we had dated off and on for 7 years before we got married. And I said, I got to get out. And she said, this is hard. I could see how this is not working. And I was like, I had a twinge of defensiveness about Steve. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, he likes you so much more than you like you. It must be terrible. It's like, fuck you, man.
That line really stays with me. He likes you so much more than you like you. Sometimes the hardest relationship to repair isn't with another person, it's the one we have with ourselves. When you've spent years protecting yourself, being useful, strong, or ready for everything, you can become so focused on getting through life that you forget to ask whether you actually like the person you've had to become.
I wanted out of where I was raised. I wanted to leave everything I knew. And so I always felt like an outsider. I didn't want to I wasn't popular. I wasn't dating a quarterback. That was a dream that my parents and their parents and their parents, you were a bear cadet and you dated a quarterback and you got a farm. So I felt not cute, not popular, not understood. And then at home, I wasn't easygoing. I was anxious and always ready. Oh, because my parents parented with a very big, heaping dose of shame. And a ton of it was about appearance, being fun. You needed to be tough and strong and throw on a baseball cap and get somewhere really quick, low maintenance. And you needed to be a beauty pageant queen. Oh my God, yes. I think not just them. I think having young girls and young women, keeping them from developing threats to their self-esteem is not just a parental thing. It's like asking them not to breathe because the air's poison. It's like every message from everywhere. The fashion magazines, you'd read them and you think, wow, I don't look like this. How am I going to look like this? And you lather yourself up with baby oil and you put lemon juice in your hair. You put tinfoil under your chin, get as much sun cancer as you could because we didn't know, we all wore jeans that you had to put on with pliers for the zipper because they were so tight. Appearance mattered. This is Texas, baby. We're not neurobiologically hardwired to stay in fear for very long. So if I work for you and you're using power over to lead me, you're threatening me with my job, you're threatening me with consequences, you're threatening me with demotion. One of two things is going to happen for me neurobiologically. I am either going to just become numb to it. It's not going to be you're not going to I can't maintain that constant level of fear. It's just too demanding, just physically demanding. Or I might get hyper normalized. I might just this is what I work in. This is like crazy. This is it, but every now and then you're going to have to do something that demonstrates to me how chaotic and cruel you can actually be. You're going to have to engage in periodic acts of cruelty to remind me that the fear is real and to put me back in it. And so one of the things you're seeing right now, we in the US, the deportation and immigration issues. This is not a president that has, tightened his belt on immigration more than other previous presidents. But we've never seen masked people grabbing people off the street while children hold onto their legs screaming, "Mom, mom, mom." We've never seen that before, right? But we've had other presidents probably exceed the deportation numbers that we're seeing. But we've never seen that level of cruelty and display. That is a real display of cruelty as a reminder of who holds power and who does not. I'm a big systems theory I'm a systems theory person. I think in systems theory. I was trained in systems theory. I think if you don't understand systems theory, at least if you're leading an organization right now, you're going to fall behind because the complexity inside and outside of organizations is such that we need a framework to understand how all of these individual systems are bumping up against each other. You probably bump up against 100 systems a day, right?
Yeah.
And so what I would imagine, the story I would make up about your success, because this is true of any systems theory, is in order for systems to thrive and grow, they have to keep permeable boundaries, meaning they have to allow feedback to flow in and out from other systems to be aware. So I'm just going to give you a very good example. I'm very excited about the experts you had on around menopause, women's life. I mean, I'm so excited about that. Like, just to be honest with you, like Mary Claire is my doctor.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Dr. Haver. So, what is interesting is the systems that just that podcast bumps up against, and the systems that would be sending feedback that, hey, this is not for me. I'm not clicking on this. I've shared that first one with 100 people, because there's a reality to our lives that is uncomfortable for people, but those are your partners and your moms and your, and your bosses, and it's real. And I can guarantee if this was happening to dudes, like it'd be a bajillion dollar, whatever, over a trillion, gajillion. I don't know. But just thinking about that one podcast and the systems that you're touching, health, women's issues, family systems are affected. Like, that podcast hits 20 systems that I can think of in my head right now. The divorce rates of women in their 50s and 60s. A healthy system has permeable boundaries, meaning feedback is flowing in and out all the time. What happens when the world gets complex is we start not wanting the feedback.
Maybe you don't have to stop being strong. Maybe you just deserve to discover that you don't have to be on guard all the time. If you've spent years reading the room, protecting other people, hiding your feelings, or preparing for what might go wrong, there was probably a reason you learned to do that. But you can begin asking a different question now. What would my life feel like if I didn't always have to protect myself? You don't have to tear down every wall today. Sometimes healing starts by noticing that the wall is there.